Doom of screw it. Let's just jump right in. You all know why we're here. 3, 2, 1, go. DDD0 Doom Queen Machinax is a level 8 fiend that can fetch a dark contract the turn it's activated, summons itself from the face-up extra deck when a DDD or contract is destroyed, then can pop a card, and if she's destroyed, she can scooch into the Pendulum Zone. DD Lance Soldier is a tuner that can summon itself from grave by breaking a contract, and can increase a DD's level by 1 for each contract you've been through. Defense Soldier can either pull a DD out of the scale or banish a DD from grave to make your DDDs Armée DDDs, and can banish itself from grave to add back a DD penned. Dark Contract with the Zero King is treated as a DD card, can expense a DD card to summon a DD from deck but lock you to them, and costs 1000 every standby phase. Dark Contract with the Different Dimension can shuffle back 2 contracts to banish a card from your opponent's field or graveyard, costs 1000 per turn, but when it dies gains 500 life, with an extra 500 tax credit if your opponent did it. Wise King Solomon is a DD rank 4 that can detach 1 to search a DD card, and upon banishment can give a DD you control Flame Wingman effect. First King Clovis can bring back a banished DD or one in grave if you're under contract, and when he gets banished, all your DDs get piercing this turn. Sky King Zeus Ragnarok is a link 3 that can negate a monster effect in hand by banishing a DD in a contract, and can pop a DD or a contract you control to give you an extra pendulum summon this turn. And DDDD Dimensional King Arc Crisis is a fusion you can summon by banishing a fiend of every color. Wide imperms on summon, attacks every monster, hops in the scale when he dies, and as a scale can break any number of contracts to release that many Doom Kings from federal prison. This wave of support gives the deck better ingredients and better pizza, with more starters, better plays into disruption, and a better ceiling on all your combos. Red Woman can grab Gate or Zero King for a search or summon from deck, meaning she and Kepler can cycle between one another in every direction. After she places Zero King, she can serve as the requisite fee for its summon, setting her up to return to the field when something else is popped as extra material, or to pop herself once more in the monster zone so she can reclaim her place in the scale to pend with. On your opponent's turn, she can hop out of the extra after you resolve Deus Machinax to squeeze in a free extra pop, and since she places a gate instead of searching, she works well under Droll after you fish it out early with Gate or Count. Defense Soldier and Lancer Cookie are mostly just utility combo pieces. When your Lancer Soldier is dumped with Copernicus, he can come back by killing Gate or Zero King, and either make Clovis, who can bring him back right away, or work his way up the corporate ladder into a level 4 to make either Solomon or Little Caesar.
Pizza.
Solomon is a useful tool both for getting any of your monsters like Griffin or Scale Surveyor to extend, or in the same way that Griffin does, letting you search your DD back row like Headhunt. And after using him to search, he can be made into Kingtail, a good material for Gilgamesh. Clovis, being a level 6 synchro, is on its own a useful attribute since it's an easily accessible material for High Caesar, so you don't need to find 2 ways to fusion summon anymore, but also for your trouble gets you a free revival so you can loop Tell for another mill, or bring back the same Lance Soldier to make Siegfried. Not only is this bad boy an excellent check to Nabibu, being able to hit the board within 5 summons, or at least be threatened early enough that you won't lose too much to it, it's also fine on an end board being like half of a ripper, and giving you an extra Frenulum summon for your dick monsters lets you nut out another disruption with the same material. And furthermore, all this extra extension gives you lines to play around multiple different hand traps beyond just Nib, even including the devastating Imperm on Gilgamesh, with options to just power through it or protect it by tuning Red Woman with Peach Boy to make Bright Armageddon. But a significant number of these lines require that you make a call on what hand trap to play around and lock into that particular line. So unless they pay you to see the future, you might just lose to a failed read. And while it's managed to cut down on some bricks like Swirl Slime, you've still got plenty of bricky draws like Orthros and Necro Slime that maybe you can swap around with other similar bricks, but you can never wash it all away. But at least if you do get through a DDD combo and survive to turn 3, even if you can't rebuild a fully broken board, Arc Crisis can just show up and assert himself using Clovis and Solomon's inherited effects to turn your opponent into a different state of matter. I'll activate Imperm. Response? Yeah, I'm gonna activate MST. I'm gonna make an MST negate joke. It comes with the joke. The deck comes with an MST negate joke. You don't have to make it separately. It comes with the joke. The joke. The level 3 Radiant Typhoons can summon themselves if your opponent has no back row, or if you have MST in grave. Eldom is a beast that searches a monster or MST on summon. Swen is a beast warrior that searches a back row or MST. And Megala is a fairy that summons one from deck that you don't already control when you use a Radiant Typhoon quick play or MST, but locks you to wind. Crocea is a winged beast that summons herself from hand if a quick play is activated, searches a Radiant Typhoon and MST on summon but locks you to wind, and is indestructible while your opponent's back row is clear. Vara Envirorune is a level 9 Aqua that summons itself from hand when a quick play is activated, or from grave when MST is activated, and can negate a monster effect if you have MST in grave, and destroy it if you have 2 MST. Phonix is a Pyro with the same 2 summoning conditions, and when a quick play is activated, he can spin 2 of your opponent's cards. All 3 of the quick plays are 2-fers with their second effects letting you search MST, and if they're destroyed by MST, they can reset themselves. Chant searches a level 4 or lower Radiant Typhoon, Manifestation mills a Radiant Typhoon, and Vision is a lure for quick plays or Radiant Typhoons. And Mandate can shuffle back 3 quick plays to draw a card and boost wins by 3, resets itself if it's destroyed by MST, and once per chain can respond to the activation of MST to negate a card. Let me take a moment to appreciate that they didn't make this a mentions archetype. All these cards mention MST, but they still gave them like a real archetype name. I was getting kind of sick of mentions archetypes, so thank you for that one. Anyway, this shit's a bit of a mess. This is a handful of decent payoffs for the archetype, with their level 9s being a negate and a double spin, and Megalith being able to whip either of them out on either turn when you use a quick play, the little ones all being free summons, kind of. Makes it easy to set up turn 1 without even using your normal summon, and you have consistent access to them since Eldum can search Swen can search Chant, and Chant can search Eldum. Crocea then can search anything alongside the Man of the Hour, which can set up Mandate for at least 1 negate. To summon her, you'll need to have drawn another quick play, because even with that much consistency, none of the starters can guarantee you'll have one alongside her. But bearing in mind that the 3s all summon themselves, you do have the option to just tribute summon her.
So I got that going for me.
But this takes us right into the problems facing this deck. There's not really a 1-card combo to establish anything of much consequence. Even with that tribute summon interaction, you're still only setting up 1 negate, and then with the bodies left on board, you can make Great Fly, I guess? I don't know. To get the full extent of what the deck wants to set up, you'll need to open some combination of engine or some sort of extra quick play to help Crocea get on board. And while there's quite a few good generic quick plays, especially in this format, most of them are going second cards like Droplet and Super Poly. And this deck cannot go second. Even if your opponent just T-sets and passes, your level 3s will cease to be free summons, forcing you to clear their back row or at least stick an MST to grave, which then takes us to the great debate of how many MST to play. They're huge bricks going first, with multiples being at best ceiling slop to get more out of Mandate and Envirorune, but going second you can practically lose on the spot if you don't open one. So I really don't see much potential in Pure right now unless you're skilled enough to always have Featherstorm. Outside of Pure though, there's a couple points worth mentioning. The level 3s are competent rank 3 enablers, and Pure being able to make Gossip Shadow and Cicada King, or even the elusive Totem Bird, all under the Windlock. But outside of that, Eldum, Swen, and Chant are all starters for any rank 3 you want really, like Gabonga, Chariot Carrier, Mirage Stelio. So in all these decks you can play 9 Terror Top and no Takatomborg, with the drawback being that you'll probably always be siding them out going second. And Vision, being generic to quick plays, means you can use it to great effect in decks like Runic and Sky Striker. And both of these engines have the added benefit of getting to search MST as a flex option. Marshmallow Yummy can summon himself if you control no monsters or only light beasts, and recurs a Yummy spell trap on summon, or place a Yummy continuous or field if a synchro summoned it. Yum Yummies steals $5 from your opponent every time you summon 2 or more Yummies, can pay 5 to turn 2 monsters on either field, including Snatchy, into a Yummy synchro, and if your opponent breathes, can pay 1 to link summon a Yummy. One of the main criticisms leveled at Yummy from the start was its lack of extension through their normal summon being removed, since their special summons need you to stick an extra deck monster. 1 break on Cookie, and your whole plan crumbles. Marshmallow addresses that, giving you a way to extend onto an empty board without burning your surprise activation. But it also frees up your surprise activation turn 1, letting you use it to end on a spare body to sync with Snatchy without having to tag out, or extend through Nib while still getting surprise back to hand to set. The downside is that unlike all the other Yummies, Marshmallow activates to summon himself, making him more interactable to begin with, but also opening you up to Izuna. Where before, one of Yummy's greatest strengths in the format was being able to ignore Izuna, so much so that other variants that play into it have mostly floundered compared to Pure, now one of your main ways to extend comes with the caveat that it gives your opponent yet another opportunity to disrupt you. Uninterrupted, you can maneuver around this while still getting to use Marshmallow's reset by discarding it with Cupsy Way immediately after searching it, setting it up in grave for surprise to bring back. And what's more, even though he might erode that one strength of the deck, Marshmallow also fixes one of the deck's glaring weaknesses. Before, there was no way to recur a banished field spell, leaving many players losing to Little Knight removing Mignon unless they were brave enough to play 2. But with Marshmallow, you can tag out from a level 2, or proactively use Starham to bring back Mignon from banished and keep your main gameplay loop intact. Yum Yum is probably not worth a second look. It's decent removal, but it's still targets, so it's not really covering any new bases, and getting to link back into a Snatchy after your opponent blocks you out of access to it on their turn is enough of an edge case that it doesn't justify a new brick. Dracotail Frixel reborns a Dracotail on summon, then bounces a monster you control, and sets a back row when it's fused. Sting banishes a monster and a spell from your opponent's grave, then can bottom a Dracotail card from grave or banished to draw 1. These are, I'll be honest, pretty marginal additions to the deck. Frixel is mostly a turn 3 card to get back your A-list normal summons like the Fits after Laundry Day, while putting yourself back in hand to keep as a hand fusion material. But she can also bring back a Phymena and bounce it right back to hand to use her quick fusion. On turn 1, she can be used as material from hand or with Rahu, then brought back with Secretarion to get back a body on board and one back to hand. And she's got some important traits for other builds like Branded, where she's a light Dracotail name you can fuse into either Albion. Sting was hastily scribbled down onto the paper while the teacher was collecting everyone else's homework. Graveyard Disruption is definitely relevant, but it's unmistakably the worst Draco set. At best, it's good that you can play a third trap with the bottoming effect, because previously you could get both traps stuck in grave with no way to recur them in the grind unless you slot in Tyrant Dragon. K904 Noroi is an Earth Machine that can be normal summoned if your opponent showed up, summons a K9 from deck on normal but locks you while it's face up, and can sack a K9 card to look at your opponent's hand. Jax can make dick jokes and Vocaloid references. Oh, sorry. K9 Jax can detach a material to Papa John on summon, or when your opponent breaks the K9 law, and a K9 it's attached to does double damage to a fugitive opponent. Noroi fills a role that K9 has been missing as a deck, being an actual normal summon, and a pretty decent one at that, giving the deck a real one-card combo. Getting either of your searchers directly from deck and then making Ripper to break the lock, and search another name immediately enables Jokel, and to use his hand look effect, you can send the used copy of Case from the back row, which does not trigger it to search a quick play because that would make too much sense. But at the very least, it lets you gather evidence on what your opponent's up to so you can plan accordingly. Jax is a bit of an upgrade over Hound, being a rank 5 you can make off of Izunar Force Release on your opponent's turn, but also with your Jokel and Lantern summons. With its open-ended effect time, you can either immediately use it to pop an extra monster, or hold it to scare your opponent off of using another hand or grave effect after already baiting out the Ripper negate. As part of other K9 variants, Noroi has some noteworthy applications. As a machine, he can be used as a starter in Crystron without conflicting with Scrap Recycler, since you can link him off with River Stormer into Platinum Gadget. Meanwhile, in Vol, he's opened up the potential of the K9 engine when you open it with no useful Vol engine. You see, starting with either him or Jokel in a 5, you can generate 6 level 5 materials, 2 of them going to Ripper, whilst the remaining 4 can be made into Saryuja. This gives you another chance to find your main engine with an incredibly high likelihood of getting some sort of starter and some favorable attributes among the 6 or 7 cards in hand to choose from. Noroi taking up the normal summon largely doesn't matter since Saryuja can summon whatever you draw, and while sculpting your hand is extra useful to Vol, this combo can be used in just about any K9 variant to vastly improve your consistency, even though it doesn't necessarily guarantee a starter. Solfachord Primoa can bounce a scale when you pendulum summon, searches a Solfachord on summon, adds one back when you link summon a Solfachord, and protects Solfachords from being negated if you have an even and odd scale up. Solfagia can pocket veto a monster effect on the field while you control a Grand Solfachord, then destroy itself, can summon itself if you control no monsters or only Solfachords, and can summon a Solfachord from hand or from grave or extra if you tribute her as cost. Happiness is 3 different Yu-Gi-Oh cards. They're really digging this design concept lately. It can pitch a card to search 2 Solfachords, then summon one from hand, plus another for each monster your opponent controls, lets you conduct an extra pendulum summon, and summons your scales. This support greatly simplifies Solfachord, giving you much more consistent access to the Solfachords that actually advance your plays, like Gracia, who you can search and immediately summon with Happiness. Primoa can search Happiness and vice versa, making them both starters to get to Elegance and Cutia in hand, and beyond material on board. With Elegance, you can set whatever odd and even scale you want, which gives us a good opportunity to talk about our 2 new ones. As a 0 and a 9 respectively, Primoa and Solfagia are already the best scales the deck has access to, but their effects in the scales make them more than worthwhile. Solfagia is a great addition to the end board, negating through chain blocks, and Primoa bouncing herself is useful for the kind of niche scenario where you have to lead with Elegance, since it'll put her in hand to normal summon, and for the end of the turn after your second pendulum summon to put her in hand as follow-up, and free up a zone for the second odd scale so that Solfagia and Grand Kulia don't conflict with each other. Speaking of Grand Kulia, linking Beyond and Cutia into her will trigger Primoa to add back Happiness so you can use its second effect for that second pendulum summon, and between Cutia and Beyond the Pendulum, you can easily get your other 2 Gracias in rotation to make Ripper. Yeah, that's right, I'm ignoring all the Zark shit with the unnegating and whatnot because I am an adult with a job, and I'm here to tell you to eat your broccoli and sleeve up Jokel. With Jokel, you can summon the 3rd Gracia from hand, or Disablaster, who's also searchable with Beyond and is a good extender if you draw him, and then link Jokel off to turn on Lantern, netting you IP, Forced Release, and another rank 5 for the end board. Getting to play Jokel makes drawing Gracia better, and of course with Noroi, your consistency improves with the Saryuja line. So this deck can put up a strong board with pretty good consistency, while supported by one of the best engines in the game. Gouki Machine Suprex is a level 4 tuner that summons itself in a second Gouki from hand but locks you to Goukis while they're on the field, and searches a Gouki when he hits the grave. Gouki Game Face summons a level 4 lower Earth, Warrior, Dino, or Cybers from hand on activation, and contribute a link 3 or higher Gouki to summon a Dino Wrestler or G Golem. Gouki Chic Ogre, I cannot believe that one got through, is a link 2 of Goukis that summons any number of Goukis from hand when you search a Gouki, but locks you while they're face up, and Confusion summon a Gouki. Gouki Dragon Ogre is a generic level 6 synchro that searches a Gouki spell on summon, and when he hits the grave, adds back a Gouki from grave with less attack than an Earth monster you control. And Gouki the Tyrant Ogre is a fusion of a Gouki Link and a Warrior, Dino, or Cybers that pops cards on summon up to the link rating of Goukis used as material, and if you used a 3 or higher, your opponent can't respond. There's also Armades. This is honestly some of the most directionless support I have ever seen. It's obviously not bad, just kind of lacking in the fundamentals we look for on this show. There's still no one-card combo, and there isn't really a new payoff, so to understand the support, you kind of have to read between the lines. Chic Ogre is a clear standout, letting you vomit the 2 searches that his 2 materials floated into right onto the board. This can immediately translate to Power Load and 2 more searches, which can be Machine into 2, which then makes Dragon to search Rematch or Game Face, but you can also start your turn with the Machine since Suprex is still the most efficient way of getting 2 Goukis on board, and Machine functions as pretty much 3 more copies, probably better copies since he can't be impermed. To make Dragon later, you can just use Rematch to get him and a 2 back on board. As for payoffs, Power Load is pretty much the only Gouki worth building towards, but technically there are a few new options. Game Face is already a decent extender to get another name out of hand, but it can also be used to trade a Link 3 for Pankratops. After using Machine to make Dragon, you can rematch him at a 1 to get the 5 stars needed for Nat Beast. What are you doing here?
I only eat at 5-star restaurants.
By using 2 Rescorpio, which you can get on field without locking yourself with Rematch and Suprex, you can make Ripper and pivot into a Canine engine. To get a 5 back to hand for Jokel, you can use Dragon Ogre to add back the Rescorpio you detached, and you can still get Rescorpio's float effect even after using it as Xyz material by linking it off with Jokel. So very similarly to Solfachord, this deck can use Canine for Soyuja consistency, Jokel extension, and reliable sealing. Serene Psychic Sorceress can pay 1000 on summon to set a teleport quick player normal, very important that it can set a normal, and can bounce a card when she goes to grave, or 2 if you control a Psychic, Synchro, or Fusion. Axon Kicker Oracle is a fusion of a Psychic and a Synchro, Xyz, or Link, gains 1000 for the turn for each such monster used as material, can negate a summon and banish that monster, and when it goes to grave, it can banish a teleport to come back. These 2 cards fill some pretty specific holes left in the initial wave of Psychic support. Sorceress setting a teleport incentivizes you not to just go for another E-Telly to extend, but instead to set one of the teleport quick plays that nets you an additional disruption, like E-Telly. Just being a second teleport searcher at least gives you some reason to play Parallel or Fusion. Firing Parallel on your opponent's turn by sacking Sorceress will trigger her to bounce 2 while setting up Fenrir or Unicorn for only 1000 life, and Fusion of course will get you Absolute Axon Kicker, who also has been buffed in a way that nobody asked for. While Oracle is fine as your choice of Fusion to hard summon, he's nowhere near as good as Absolute for barely any less material cost, but he is a level 10 and therefore a card you can summon with Absolute's Graveyard effect on turn 3. I don't know what you're doing with his summon negate by then, maybe stopping a Chainlink 1 Lupus Xyz, but what's pretty decent about him is his effect to come back when your opponent pops him or you link him off, to keep him and his 2900 damage on board. But none of that could matter if it tried, so let's talk about Super Poly. With its highly generic second material, any deck with a Psychic can eat part of a board with Super Poly now and get a decent sticky check to Lupus and Snatchy for the trouble, and any board that ends with a Kashtira is inherently more vulnerable to Super Poly now. But most importantly for the present moment, or at least 2 weeks ago, Oracle can eat several different VS K9 boards alive using Holly, Sue, or Valon as the Psychic, and Ripper or Rock as the extra deck monster. Vengeful Witch can summon herself if you control Black Rose Dragon, a friend of the channel, or a plant Synchro, and if she's sent to the graveyard while a plant Synchro is on board, you can pitch a card to summon a plant with no ass from deck, but lock you to Synchros. Twilight Rose Black Knight reborns Black Rose Dragon, or a level 4 or lower plant on summon, can modulate a plant's level by 1, and boost your plants by 1000 while you control a Synchro. Black Rose Garden is a continuous spell that surges a Rose Dragon on activation, makes all monsters plants, and if it's destroyed, it does a bunch of damage and shit. It's like a non-trivial amount. Rage Rose Witch is a level 6 Synchro that protects all your plants, mills a plant from deck and a plant from extra on summon but locks you to Synchros, and comes back when a card is destroyed. And Bramble Rose Dragon requires a plant tuner, does 600 damage and sinks all your opponent's monsters by 600 every time they use a monster effect, can quick effect tribute itself to summon Black Rose, and can banish itself from grave to reborn a plant tuner. While it doesn't make Rose Dragons into a super streamlined deck, this support makes a bit more sense of some of the different directions that 5D's plant stuff has gone over the years. Since Black Rose Garden can search either Roxrose or White Rose, and Roxrose can search either Garden or Vengeful Witch. Both of them are starters that get you to Bramble and trigger Witch to summon Twilight. Twilight reborning Witch and making it a 3 gets you to Rage Rose, who can mill Garden Rose Maiden to bring back a tuner or a whole last level 7 later in the turn, as well as one of the biodegradable tuners that plants have like Spore or Glow Up Bulb. And Bramble is a multifaceted card that can help you extend and be one of your strongest end board pieces. With the Spore from grave, you can make it into Crimson Dragon, then bring it back with Maiden to make it to another synchro like Crystal Wing or Return Zero for Crimson Dragon to target. But you could also kind of just end on that board as is, with Crimson Dragon able to tag into Moonlight. Meanwhile, Bramble will slowly whittle away your opponent's life until you think they might threaten it, at which point you can tag into Black Rose and clear the board. Except it won't have to clear the whole board, because Black Rose Garden's type changing does more than just launder the Rose Dragons into being usable materials for Bramble and fuck over your opponent's type requirements. In tandem with Rage Rose protecting all your plants, when you tag into Black Rose, you can keep all your monsters alive, losing only Garden, which will do even more burn on top of what Bramble already has. The problem with this strategy is that it's kind of easy to interrupt. Garden being your only way to make rocks or red into Bramble materials kind of kneecaps them if you don't get to Garden, and the boards it can produce aren't really worth the trouble. But with the locks on Vengeful and Rage Rose only covering Synchro monsters, there's some pretty decent potential for a plant engine to be of use to a Synchro deck at some point in the future. Tri-Brigade can search a Tri-Brigade spell trap or banish Tri-cards from grave to summon a link from extra but lock you to Tri-types. Tri-Brigade arms Mouser is a link 2 of Tri-types that sends 2 Tri-Brigade cards from deck or extra on summon but locks you to Tri-types, and when it hits the grave it books a monster. These are a couple pretty good cards that are not exactly what Tri-Brigade needs. Mouser is a fairly generic consistency piece letting you dump Kitten to Nerval for a search alongside Farragut or Bucephalus for a draw, or if you're already deep into a combo you can send something for a little more ceiling like Oath for a spell negate, or Shurag to search something outside the archetype like a Wanghu. Making it isn't quite as simple as any old Tri, because she does require a link summon, but one decent engine to get 2 Tri-types on board did just coincidentally fall out of the sky. Swen, Eldam, and Chant are all starters to make Mouser without the normal summon, and with a free search of MST, so you can search a Tri and already have like 6 or 7 Tri-types engraved to banish. The free draw and free MST also subsidize the pricey effect of Bearbrum to bring back a Tri, so you have that as an option to summon even more links. And now with Revolt, you can bring back Mouser on your opponent's turn and link it off so that in addition to Shurag's banish, you get a Book of Moon as well. This also gives you a way to have an immediate disruption with Revolt while still holding the banish until Rugal or Hammer's summon later on. But the deck is still missing quite a bit of ceiling and resiliency to be truly competitive in a 2025 landscape. Take Hammer, which can be used to summon a second Tri on your opponent's turn after Revolt, but after 5 years, there is still not a second good one. There's a couple new Tri-types you can cheat out with your monster effects that are maybe worth a slot, like Snatchy, who can quick sync with Nerval into Cookie, but not much else. So Hammer is only really good at cheating out things like Farragut and Bearbrum on your own turn to try to play through Disruption, which the deck still struggles with. Dogmatika Fleur-de-Lis Thunderbolt is a Regenesis target that can summon itself as a quick effect if an extra deck monster is on board, and on summon can set a Dogmatika trap from deck that you can activate this turn if your opponent controls an extra deck monster with 2500 or more. What's up guys, Dogmatika here, can summon a monster from grave or banish by sending a monster from extra or a Dogmatika from deck to the graveyard with an equal or greater attack, but locks you from the extra until your next end phase. Thunderbolt is a pretty strong new option not only for Dogmatika decks, but technically is a generic hand trap that can be used to set punishment. Not every deck will enable you to activate it the same turn, but decks like Dracotail and Ryziel will frequently put up big enough monsters as their first extra deck summons. The problem, beyond punishment locking you and therefore massively limiting the amount of decks that can play this package, is that the specific benchmark of 2500 makes it really difficult to use punishment's bestie, Natis. Unless their extra deck monster is exactly 2500, or they have a smaller monster on board for you to target next to their big one, you might be forced to settle for just 1 pop, and I kind of think Raigeki Break isn't worth this much effort. And don't even get me started on decks like Yummy that can play their entire turn without turning on your trap, meaning that at best it can be used at the start of your turn as a board breaker, but more likely is just going to force them to divert some of their resources towards removing it before passing. So I think she'll be usable in decks like Pure Dogmatika and some variants of Regenesis, but her generic potential is truly wasted on her. She also helps Ritual Dogmatika. I think Ritual Dogmatika players aren't human. Megalith Fulak adds back a Megalith from grave on summon, and can quick effect Ritual summon a Megalith from grave using himself as one of the tributes. Megalith Anastasis can pitch a card to search a small Megalith and a big Megalith, and when you summon a Megalith you can either draw 2 and discard 1, or sack an opponent's monster. And Megalith Notre Plura is a level 12 that requires only rituals as tributes, can be revealed from hand to make your Megalith ritual monsters unrespondable, and can negate an effect and destroy it, then tribute a monster your opponent controls if that effect targeted something. These cards add a good amount of flexibility and and sealing to Megalith. Fulak takes advantage of Ophiel and Haggath being non-once per turn searchers by letting you loop them back to hand to summon again, and also summoning them straight from the grave. This gives you a good way to use Haggath twice so that you can end on both Unformed and Anastasis, and it also gives you an alternative way to summon Bethor on your opponent's turn whilst being able to use Bethor's effect in hand on your own turn for a ritual summon. Meanwhile, Fool can now focus its efforts on implementing Plura, and Omni you can summon by tributing over Bethor in a level 4 Fool. Anastasis, getting both Fulak and Bethor, can set up that interaction, and across your turn and your opponent's, it can either cycle 4 cards, or draw 2 and tribute one of your opponent's bodies when you summon Plura. But in addition to being vulnerable to both Ash and Ogre with its big glowing discard cost, it's also somehow not a starter for the deck, because even 2 Megaliths isn't enough to get a ritual summon going on its own. Instead, for true 1 cards, you might have to look at rank 4 enablers like Raziel and Onomat that can make both Gallant Granite and Code Igniter, with a level 4 left over to tribute for Ophiel. Or you could go for Nadir and lock yourself out of extra deck plays in exchange for 2 Herald. So strangely, despite how good these cards are for your sealing, they really do nothing for the problem that's always plagued Megalith, being the amount of engine they need to find to get off the ground. Mariamne Paradox, the true Draco Phoenix Knight, can be summoned using back row's tributes, can special itself to either field by popping a Draco from hand or field, and on summon banishes the top 4 of your deck. Masterpiece, the true Drake Overlord, requires 3 tributes to normal summon, which can include back row, can negate a monster effect on field or in hand, and if your opponent destroys him, he skips their next main phase. And full name of the card, Draco Awakening, searches a true Draco or true King monster, or Draco Slayer or Draco Overlord Pendulum monster on activation, and if a Draco or King is destroyed, you can put it in the back row. There's a couple good ideas here. The added consistency of Awakening gives you more access to all your names while serving as the tribute fodder for them, and Paradox giving itself to your opponent forces them to trigger your Draco searches with its mandatory Garnet check. Evil and fucked up Masterpiece is a pricey boss monster, but being able to trigger 3 back row in one chain by quick tribute summoning it can be a pretty massive blowout alongside the monster negate, and since it'll skip whatever your opponent's next main phase is upon destruction, he's implicitly resistant to being outed in the battle phase given that your opponent won't get a main phase 2 to continue their plays. That's pretty much all the good. Let's jump right into the problems. Awakening isn't searchable. Since it's not a true Draco card, you can't search it with Diagram or Ignis to get another tribute summon, so it's kind of in the exact position that Diagram was already in. A good searcher that you better just draw. And Master Bates is a fine boss, but it's hard to say he's worth a god card's share of tributes for effects that are arguably worse than his hit the slay button counterpart. Onomatikage is a level 4 reptile that's treated as all 4 Onomat archetypes, can summon himself from hand or grave if you control any of them, and can banish himself from grave to shuffle back 2 Xyz monsters from grave. Norse legend states that Odin gave up one of his eyes to drink from the Well of Mimir, giving him infinite knowledge of the cosmos. They don't pay me to just talk about stuff. They don't pay me to just know stuff. They pay me to know everything. This is a pretty simple card that fixes some general clunkiness in Onomat through its simplicity. Being not just all 4, but all 5 archetypes means you can search it literally whenever you want. You might as well just pick up your deck at the start of the game and just do it. Who's gonna stop you? One of the reasons I assumed it would be Kage was because I thought Konami would try to get us to play Feral Imps. But with 6 or 7 ways to search in an archetype, there's really no point, as effect makes him good at whatever you want from him. If you search him, he summons himself immediately. If you send him to grave, he comes right back. He's basically a legally distinct second copy of Glove that's also good to draw. But that gives us a good chance to hop off his dick and talk about the main way you'll be seeing him. In any deck playing the Dododo engine, you can replace Glove with a card that still works even if you draw it. So to anyone I saw at Nats scrambling to find a copy of Glove, lol. Lamau. I hope your $50 rare you played once was worth it. Its second effect has a couple uses. In the quote-unquote pure build, you can shuffle back things that'll help rebuild on turn 3, like Girl or the Futures. In Raziel, you can put back Detonator even without Cross, but also Aggregator and Twins to dump with X again. And regardless of what you put back, he's an easily banishable monster to target with Nemesis Flag. I don't often talk about this engine on this show, but it feels like a rank 4 enabler that puts himself in the banish pile largely for shits and giggles, does significantly move the needle on how well this deck gets Protoss on board. Ichiki Sayori-hime is a level 4 spirit with all the fixins that can normal summon herself if you control a monster with 800 attack or defense, and on summon searches a light or dark monster with 800 attack or defense. Like Sakitama before it, this card is one of the very few extenders that works under Exo-Sister Martha's Lock, and it fits into exactly the same slot, being searchable with Aratama, who has the required 800 attack. But every Exo-Sister also has an 800 stat, meaning you can summon Ichiki after an Exo normal summon, and use the search on Martha. Since Martha can't be summoned to a board with Ichiki on it, you'll need something to overlay with her to make Martha work, so so she isn't a one-card combo on her own. She does, however, work with the 800 attack Cyberdark, so I guess we get to keep that engine. Levitain the Burning Blade is a link 2 of 2 fire monsters that can quick effect tribute another fire monster to reborn one with the same type but a lower level, and can banish itself from field to protect your face-down back row. This card is almost creepily devoted to Rescue Ace Turbulence. Like SP, you can summon Turbulence onto a board with Levitain to keep it safe from Imperm by quick tributing it. And if they fire Imperm preemptively, you can make them into Promethean Princess to force a second Imperm. But if you don't have to link them off, you can keep your Rescue Ace back row safe from Lightning Storm and Feather Duster. One small issue. AGOV format was 2 years ago. I am sorry to inform you that that is in fact a long time ago. You are an old person. You are going to be on Social Security very soon. Hey, where's that cousin of yours anyway? I put Infernal Punisher in my notes as though I was supposed to talk about it for some reason, but there is literally no reason to. I don't know why this is here. Tragic Twin Twine Jewels is an equip spell you can only give to an extra deck monster. And when your opponent summons a bigger extra deck monster, you can pop both and burn both players for their attack. This card is an imperfect fit for decks that can currently search equip spells like Infernoble and Mikanko, because equipped to Charles there won't be very many things coming out of the extra that are big enough to pop, and Mikanko can't equip it to their 0 attack main deck monsters. But what they can do is equip it to something indestructible like Engineer, so that after popping your opponent's monster, Twin Threads remains on the field and can keep popping every big enough monster your opponent summons until you run out of life. In a theoretical world where a deck comes out that can equip it to Fucho, it can act as practically a floodgate. Quick paragraph about RB. Again. These are so fucking bad. Oh my god. Look at this one. Dominus Spiral is a trap you can activate from hand if your opponent activated a monster effect in hand or grave this turn, but locks you from light or dark monsters from the duel if you do, that bounces a monster your opponent controls, then if you have no traps in grave, lets them revive a monster to replace it. Curiouser and curiouser. Just as Jam Today will never come, so too does it seem the day will never come when a Dominus card doesn't fascinate me. Since it was released into a format where every deck is at least half light or dark, this card has seen very little play so far. But a hand trap that proactively removes a monster is a pretty novel addition to a non-engine lineup if you can squeeze it in. Like any Compulse, it's best used against an extra deck monster, something they put multiple bodies into, so even though it refunds your opponent a body, they'll still have lost some value. It's really good against Ripper, getting to remove it before it can use its ignition effect, robbing them of their search and their protection. To get her back on board, they'll need to commit their 5th summon, Spiral Summon counting as their 4th. One weird thing about it though is that, unlike Purge and Impulse, its activation condition isn't pretty much free. K9 can turn it on for you with Jokul, but if they leave with Noroi, they can safely use Ripper's Search before Spiral is online. So I think any format Spiral might be good in will see tech develop that constrains when the card can be used so as to minimize its effectiveness. Doom's 5 Amalt is a level 4 dragon that searches a Doom's monster when it's summoned or destroyed, and while it doesn't equip, you can quick effect summon a Wind Machine Xyz with the same rank as its level, and attach itself and its equipment to that monster. Doom's 7 Alara does all that same stuff, but sets a Doom's back row instead of getting a monster. Doom's 0 Drastia is a level 8 that can pop a Doom's card you control to summon himself, then equip any equip spell from deck to himself, and can quickly turn himself and his equip spells into a Wind Machine Xyz. Doom's Power Patron locks you to Xyz while it's on board, can target a monster you control to turn it into a Doom's Xyz or Jupiter and equip itself to the summoned monster, and if it's destroyed, you can search any Doom's card. Doom's Raider can pop another Doom's card from hand or field to search or special a Doom's from deck, but lock you to Xyz, and when it's destroyed, you can pop an opponent's monster. Doom's Command Doomderg is an equip spell that burns the controller of its target during the standby phase, and gives a Doom's it's equipped to, or a Wind Machine it's attached to, targeting protection, and a quick effect to pop a card you control to be good at attacking and stuff.
I'm good at lightsabers!
Theorealize Overdrive brings back Medius from grave or banished, and can banish itself from grave to change a monster's level to anything from 1 to 10. Doom's Destruction can equip itself to a Doom's Xyz to make it into Colossus, and when it's destroyed can equip a Doom's from deck to a monster on the field. Doom's Break Deactorus is a generic rank 4 that on summon can pop a Doom's card, then pop a card on the field, and when it's destroyed while it had Medius or a Doom's attached, you can search or mill any equip spell. Doom's Endrastrius has a shield. Equips a monster on field to itself on summon, and can detach a material to negate a monster effect on field or in grave, then attach another opponent's monster to itself. And Jupiter, the Power Patron of Destruction, can be slapped on top of a monster with 3 or more equip cards, equips any number of equip spells from grave to itself on summon, gains 3k while it has an Xyz monster attached, and can detach a material to reborn a Doom's and pop a card. This deck has a couple good attributes going for it, but doesn't quite give you the bang for your buck that you'd hope it would. The best card to get to is Drastia, who can tag in a Drastia Drastrius on your opponent's turn to non-targeting suck up a monster, and then later negate a monster effect, making him potentially 2 disruptions on his own. With Doomderg letting you quickly pop your own Raider, you can also use that to pop a monster. To get to Drastia, you have Amolth to search it, which you can also get to from Alara setting Raider, making both of them 1-card combos, and like Artmage, Medius summoning the deck's Power Patron is also a 1-card combo. Deactress's on-summon pop can be used on the opponent's turn if you manage to end on either of the level 4s with an equip spell, but on turn 1, tagging Medius into him with Power Patron will let you pop Patron to search Raider. And when you pop Deactress with Raider, you can search any equip spell, which could be something to equip to Amolth so he can tag out too, or can be something outside the main engine like Living Fossil to extend into another rank 4, or Dogmatika to set up Winda. And although Medius is dark, you can search him with Tachyon by revealing the Fairy type 102. So through Dracluxion, the Horus engine can also start combos while setting up a spell negate which the deck otherwise doesn't have. But even with all those fancy options, the deck is still kind of low ceiling, and most of the starters suffer from the problem of putting all their eggs in one basket. Amolth alone only ends on Drastia for a measly 2 disruptions that are both tied to him resolving. Starting with Alara only adds Raider's pop to that board. If you already have Raider, then Alara can search Destruction, but hoping that one Floodgate or another will carry your board over the edge isn't much of a strategy. I see a lot of potential in Drastrius, and the open-ended activation timing on the level 4s has legs, but right now this second season is closer to the crawler end of the spectrum than Tearlament. But I know what you're here for. You want to see Artmage Wave 2. This is gonna break the meta, right? The pieces are all there. Show me the money! If your opponent controls more monsters, target monster your opponent's created. These cards fucking suck.